So I took some tears off my eyes and I put it on his forehead.
Listening to Let Your Voice Be Heard.
It's a logical fallacy, and I know that, but, as always, and maybe the rest of the panel can tell you, I play a bit of the devil's advocate because I am the lone black Republican up here.
He just made a fool out of himself. I mean, you can look at Dennis Rodman and think he's making a fool out of himself.
We know Barack Obama, what he was like, anti-war, government...
Boy, that escalated quickly.
I got to jump into a rally to save a hospital here in Brooklyn in just a minute.
I stopped working on my dissertation the second my grandmother died. I am a blazing liberal who can have a Republican-leaning ideology if you give me enough beers. I got to get you that Illuminati thesaurus. Once you get that, you're going to be able to speak in the same language I can speak.
Now, a white person with a criminal record is more likely to get a job than a black person without one.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
The point of financial stability and economic justice is that you're free from confines of society and you have more freedom and to make your own choices.
Just in general, people who have money tend to have more access to resources to be able to use in their defense versus people that don't have money. So you see a lot of, lower, and that's really a class issue, and race does come into play.
This is Let Your Voice Be Heard, right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
And we are back on Let Your Voice Be Heard on 90.3 FM WHCR, the voice of Harlem. And this is your favorite engineer on the PC 1s and 2s, Stanley, talking.
And Selena's here.
Oh, yeah, you're here too.
Yes, I am here. I am here.
Somehow she got here despite my directions. So if you're wondering why my voice may sound weird, it's because I've been a bit under the weather last couple of days, so I'm still a little bit hoarse. And then the alcohol and the riding the bulls.
Right, and all the fun you had last night, even though you're under the weather, probably made it worse.
I was still hoarse on Friday when you saw me too.
There was a big difference between Friday and Saturday. Saturday, you were having this time of your life. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I might be under the weather. Which one is it?
No, I was still sick. Just because I was having fun doesn't mean I wasn't sick, Selena.
Oh, funny. I can't have fun when I'm sick, but you can.
What are you talking about?
I just can't.
You're not using logic right now, are you?
I can't. When I'm so sick that I have to stay in bed, I have to take medicine, I have to drink soup, I'm not having an enjoyable time in my life.
Yes, but you can be sick where you're not as sick as you were in the beginning.
Okay.
But you're feeling better, but you still have some symptoms. That's what happened.
I'm just glad you didn't call out today.
That's why. If I called out, she would have had a serious issue.
I really would have.
Anyways, guys, we're not here to talk about whether I'm sick or not, or whether I'm hoarse or not, or whether Selena is a loser or not, because we know she is. We are here to talk about some tragic news, actually, that occurred yesterday afternoon in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. 2 police officers were murdered in cold blood by someone, I'm assuming a mentally ill person, who posted on Instagram a couple of hours earlier a picture of a gun saying that he was going to wrap some pigs in blankets. And he said, they take one of ours, we take 2 of theirs. And what that person was alluding to, I'm assuming, was either the death of Eric Garner or the death of Mike Brown. Both of these people of color lives were taken by police officers. He then went, and from what I understand, shot his girlfriend, then shot 2 police officers and took a picture of his leg with blood all over it, then ran to the platform at the G train and shot himself in the head. The 2 officers who were shot were in their squad car having lunch. They, obviously weren't bothering anyone. They were doing their jobs, and they were murdered in cold blood. Mm-hmm. And then we found out later on that day someone else, another cop, had a gun pointed in his face, but the gun was unloaded, thankfully. And what we've seen since the death of these 2 cops is a firestorm of emotions coming from all sides. And as someone who's been very active in the Black Lives Matter movement and the Shut It Down movement and fighting for justice for Eric Garner, John Crawford, Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, and so many other of the people of color who have been killed in cold blood by police officers or just vigilante folks such as George Zimmerman, we've seen a lot of backlash coming from, I guess you could say, the opposition, who feel like this is a perfect example of why our movement is illegitimate. And there's been a lot of anger from the NYPD and the police union in particular about these deaths. The police union actually releasing a statement blaming Mayor Bill de Blasio, saying that the blood was on his hands. He is the reason that these 2 cops were killed. He came to a place where they were convening, and all the officers turned their backs to the mayor.
Yep.
There are people who are blaming Al Sharpton and the Ferguson protesters and the Eric Garner protesters. And then there are people who are saying that this is, race baiting, things like Black Lives Matter are the reason that things like this are happening. And everyone's just very emotional. So more so than trying to have a segment where we're trying to dissect or what we're trying to like pick a side. I think what this is these next couple of minutes is going to be for is just a conversation. So what we want to do is get people's inputs, whether that be via phone call at 212-650-6903, on Twitter at BeHeard_radio, on Facebook, facebook.com/Let Your Voice Be Heard. You know, we really just want to get people's points of views, and we'll share ours as well.
Right. So, I mean, there's so many directions that we could take the conversation, and I wanted to start off here. Stanley mentioned that a lot of the finger pointing is going towards Mayor de Blasio, Al Sharpton, and, of course, the protest movement that has taken off in wake of the deaths of Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, and Tamir Rice. Now, here's my take on it. I wanted to just note that it is completely ridiculous to blame Mayor de Blasio for this person who decided to kill 2 cops yesterday. And one of the things that I'm hearing is we know that de Blasio has had very strained relations with the police force and the police union since he's taken office, and they've been very vocal in blasting and slamming the mayor because they feel like he's not advocating on their side. And one of the reasons why they even feel like that is because Mayor de Blasio, after Eric Gardner was choked to death by 2 NYPD officers in Staten Island, Mayor de Blasio came out and said that after this, I told my son Dante, who is half black and who identifies as a black American, to be more careful and cautious when it comes to interacting with police, right? So they were like, totally, that was, the police union said that comment was, I guess, anti-police in some type of way. And meanwhile, I'm thinking to myself, like, first of all, that type of comment only helps community relations with police, because number one, when you tell somebody to be completely compliant with the police officer, do not become aggressive, but fight the battle afterward, even if the police officer is rude, is maybe a little too physically aggressive. The bottom line is they have a legal firearm, and the bottom line is statistics show that if they were to shoot you either fatally or seriously, more than likely they're not even going to be indicted in a case. So the thing is, you're going to have to take it and then fight it afterward. And that's what Mayor de Blasio translates to his black son. And that's what so many black Americans tell their children. They plant this seed that, hey, if you ever interact with a white police officer, this is how you have to act in order to save your life. Why in the world would a police union blast the mayor for giving that same advice to his black son?
Because it's ran by old white men. So we do have 2 callers on the line. I want to first get to Barry, who has a comment to let his voice be heard. So Barry, please let your voice be heard. Selena, I need you to go outside, get some water, get some air. You look like you're ready to flip all the tables.
I'm so upset. Barry, let your voice be heard.
Listen, I can't understand why the cops are like that. Because, one, they had all this backlash. They've been knocking off people. They never had an excuse. They never been tried for anything. They've never been disciplined anything. But yet still, now when something does happen, they want to blame Mayor. They want to blame the mayor. They want to blame Al Sharpton. It had nothing to do with it. When you do what you do, you eventually get it back to you. Not to say that I'm condoning that, but listen, there has to be a balance. There is no balance right now.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I understand we all have to let our voices be heard, but violence does nothing but breeds more violence. Aggression does nothing but breed more aggression. This is not the way that things are supposed to happen, because the reason that we are great people in a great country is because we have the ability to think in more than just black and white, and we had to be able to think critically and understand that killing 2 innocent people who had nothing to do with anything because you were mad about a decision that had nothing to do with those 2 people does not solve a problem. Arresting the people and putting in the trial who killed Eric Garner or Mike Brown, that is justice. Killing 2 innocent people, one who was recently engaged and one who just turned 40 years old, that is not justice. And we have to be very clear about what justice is. That is not justice at all. So I really want to make sure I reject that. But we do have Asan on the air. Asan, please let your voice be heard.
Yes. What's interesting, I would like to reflect first on the Sony's pullback from its movie interview. What's interesting about this is that
Asan, I know you want to talk about Sony, but we have a lot of callers, so just please just stick to the topic of the 2 officers right now.
Okay, I'll fast forward to the 2 officers. First of all, I believe that it's a wake-up call to every police officer in this country, and also and I'm going to close after I say this. It's no fun when the rabbit has the gun. That's basically my...
I'm sorry, it's no fun when what? Can you repeat that?
It's no fun when the rabbit has the gun.
When the rabbit has the... Okay.
And that's basically my... And I believe, Selena?
Yes.
I believe your co-host, that he's a misogynist. And basically that's what I have to say. You'll take care. Love you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Stanley,
much.
are you being misogynistic?
I don't know. I get called a lot of things.
Are you being sexist again, Stanley?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I get called a lot of things. What I do want to say, once again, violence is not the way you address this issue. I 100% reject any perception that the way that we address injustice is by causing injustice in other people's lives. I reject that 100%. We do have Alyssa on the air, so I wanted to get, Alyssa's about to hit us with like the 4th page in the Constitution, Section 6.
Our favorite legal correspondent. Hey, Alyssa, we missed you
Sorry,
today.
I'm not in the studio today. Yeah, I totally agree with what Stanley just said. And, the killing of 2 police officers in cold blood is absolutely reprehensible. But I think what a lot of people also need to understand is that the police reform movement, to work on these bad policies that affect negative policing in the community is not represented by a single lone actor who merely uses the hashtags that the movement has been using. There are over 100,000 nonviolent activists that have been working diligently on these issues for a long time that are protesting against violence, not condoning it. And in fact, the New York City Police Department released a statement last night explicitly stating that based on the information they had, the guy was a lone wolf attacker and was in no way connected to any of the police reform movements. So basically, as far as I'm concerned, the police still need to be held accountable for bad policies. And one crazy person who isn't from New York City nor involved with the activist movement, it does not change that fact. And furthermore, I'm personally fed up with people promoting the notion that when we demand those who we give authority to carry firearms and enforce our laws to do so responsibly equates to lack of support for police officers. It's simply not true. Those people who feel that way are just incapable of recognizing the differences between police reform and the need for it and 2 police officers being killed, and they're, as far as I'm concerned, unqualified to have the conversation. There are people that are seeking to exploit this tragedy to use it to condemn this growing movement and trying to link tragic events to a movement that holds justice, dignity, and respect for others at its core values. It's cheap political punditry, and it's dangerous in its divisiveness.
If you ever run for office, I think this is your clip right here. I'll make sure to chop it up for you.
Oh, how we miss you, Alyssa.
Got it, guys. So, yeah, like I said, this is just not representative of the movement, and I know I sounded like I was reading there because my thoughts were all cluttered, so I was trying to just write them all down so they would be succinct, but, like I said, this is reprehensible, and everybody in this movement thinks it is, so it shouldn't be representative of the movement.
Guys, if you want to let your voice be heard on the NYPD shootings that happened Saturday afternoon, the number is 212-650-6903. You can also tweet us at BeHeard_radio.
I want to bring something up. Do you remember the whole Clive and Bundy situation when they pretty much had the feds held up against guns? And they had all these gun rights activists coming to Nevada to help him hold up the ranch by pointing guns at federal people. There was a couple there, a husband and wife, who were there with Clive and Bundy, and they stayed at the ranch. But then eventually they left. They went to a town in Texas and shot 2 police officers in the head because they were tired of police and the government trying to control things. So they were going to go on a crusade by killing police officers. They then killed themselves. These people were wearing adult diapers while they were doing this. Yes. And when they killed the police officers, they would say these people, the media was very clear to say these people clearly had some mental health issues. Mm-hmm. They were not normal people. Guess what they were? White people. So now these 2 white people shot this cop because they were tired of the government trying to get in their hands and tell them what to do. And no one equated that to all white people or all gun rights people or all states' rights people having an issue with police officers. And we were all very clear to make sure that we stated that these people had mental health issues. This guy posted on Instagram, the killer of these 2 officers, he posted on Instagram a picture of a gun and said, "I'm going to kill 2 people." And then he posted a picture of his leg bloody after he killed 2 people. There was very clearly a mental health issue there. This is not someone from the Black Lives Matter corner or the Shut It Down corner or the any social justice corner getting quote-unquote revenge. This was obviously someone with some serious mental health issues, and that's what it needs to be categorized as. We need to understand that because no sane person is going to go out for blood like that because good people don't do that.
Right.
You don't.
Good, rational, logical thinking people who are empathetic and sympathetic and who aren't psychopaths, don't just go out and kill people. I've joined a number of the protests, and there are some chants that say that could be inflammatory. Some of them do say, NYPD, KKK, how many blacks have you killed today, right? So they'd say things like this, but never in my mind did I ever say, you know what, this is rallying me up so much that I think that we should retaliate with some type of force or physical violence. Because why? I'm a rational thinking person, and I think anyone who takes that type of rhetoric or takes this movement to that next far-fetched degree needs to be treated, like Stanley said, as a mental case. But we're going to go on a quick break. Stay tuned. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard on WHCR. And we are back. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard right here on WHCR 90.3
a bottle. Oh, you were talking? Bow.
That's why you're misogynistic. That's why, because you keep cutting me off because I'm a woman. See?
I cut you off because you're a loser, not because you're a woman.
Whatever, Stanley.
He called me misogynist. On Twitter, I get called the N-word almost every day now.
Are you serious?
Yeah, but do you see my Twitter? All I talk about is environmental issues and Black Lives Matter. So, of course, I'm going to get called the N-word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Tell them to take the hoods off their heads before they call it. So we're back on WHCR 90.3 FM. Shout out to everyone that has been letting their voice be heard by calling in and tweeting us. We're talking about the very crucial issue of how 2 NYPD officers were shot Saturday afternoon. And I just want to point out, they were minority officers. Again, we had an officer who was Asian. He was very young. I think that he just got married 2 months ago. And then we had a Latino officer who just turned, I think it was like 42 years old a few days ago. So this is a huge tragedy that is sweeping the nation. The mayor has came out, William Bratton has come out talking about this case. And you know what? It brings up a lot of issues that we're talking about here on Let Your Voice Be Heard. And there's this one question that I want to pose to you guys. If you're out there, you can tweet us. And if you're listening, you want to call up, you can call us at 212-650-6903. I want to know, a lot of people are saying, should we take accountability as social media users and also people that run these networks? So we know that the killer, he posted a number of times how he wanted to kill police officers, how he was suicidal, and how he was out for blood. Very disturbing post on Instagram. And a lot of people are saying, where were the red flags? How come people are saying, where are the red flags? How come no one reported this? How come Instagram isn't monitoring their social media feeds to find out what's going on? If someone was to make a terrorist threat, would we catch it?
Well, here's my thing. I don't think it's fair to put the crux on Instagram why they didn't flag this. People say all sorts of crazy stuff all the time online. You don't think they're going to do it. My bigger issue with that post was he had 240 likes and multiple comments of people praising him for wanting to kill a cop. Who are you? How do you look at yourself in the mirror knowing that you championed the death of somebody else? You are a horrible person, and you should really be ashamed of your actions. But I'm not here to go on a soapbox. We do have another caller on the line. We have George. George, let your voice be heard.
Hey, how are you?
We're pretty good.
Good. I used to be an NYPD auxiliary police officer, and I can tell you that it is very dangerous out there on the streets, and I can understand the perspective of the NYPD officers. However, along the lines, citizens like us in the community of color, where we're faced with, the prejudices or discrimination based on what we wear, what we look like, it can become very difficult. And the only way I think that we can create a dialogue where we control the narrative is that we sit down with the mayor, the police commissioner, and leaders throughout the 5 boroughs, the leaders through the state of New York, and ask for real solutions and how to address the issues that's been prolonged since the Giuliani era.
That's a really good point. But, I have a question for you. How can we do that when you have a police union which is literally saying that we are at war? When they are saying that there's blood on the protesters and the mayor's hands, when you have a police union, which I'm sorry if some people don't agree with me, but he sounds like he's coming from a freaking 1940s civil rights movie. when he's one of those crazy sheriffs who let the dogs and the fire hose loose on people of color. That's what it sounds like. How can we have a dialogue when you have police officers who still don't see what went wrong in the Eric Garner incident? How can we have that dialogue?
I could tell you this, I go to John Jay College, and, I go to, school with plenty of cops, and, there's two sides to the story. And the problem is, the PBA union is only speaking for a small number of police officers. I don't think, he actually represents all 35,000 officers. So you have to remember, each rank has its own union, each rank has its own specialized, folks representing them. But I believe the Sergeants Bowler Association and the PBA, they do share views. Where there could be far right or far left, I think that in conversation, institutions like John Jay College and other institutions throughout the city, we have so much human capital here. I just feel like everybody's very on edge on this issue because everyone's looking who's going to be running for mayor in the next 4 years. And I know people have made comment, will Bill de Blasio be a one-term mayor? That's what happened to Dinkins. Mayor Dinkins was the first African-American mayor, and there was conversations. If you look at history, they wanted to make this man a one-term mayor. Why? Because he's done so much great work in terms of creating the police department where it is today. And, he left a lot of work undone, but when Giuliani came into office, if you look at history and how Giuliani and his autobiography, he talks about all these great things he's done, but people forget to realize that all these policies set in motion were done by Mayor Dinkins. And no one gives Mayor Dinkins the credit he deserved when he was mayor, back when all this all started with, when tensions were high and racism was high and, drug sales were at its peak. Mayor Dinkins was the one that led the city, despite with all the racism and anecdotes and all this craziness that was going on during his time. Now tensions have sort of, lowered, but are beginning to pick up again, and and it's the same issue with the FDNY. The FDNY had that recent case where now they have to be more diverse, and I know men of color wanted to join the FDNY, and there's some folks who disagree with the decision because it should be a brotherly love.
It really should. It really should, George. And I do want to say that we definitely appreciate you calling in, especially as someone of color who represents the NYPD. And I wanted to throw. Do we still have George on the line?
Yeah, we do have George on the line, but also we have Omar on the line, and I want to give Omar a chance to let his voice be heard as well. Omar?
Yes, hello. Good morning. Or good afternoon, rather. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, happy holidays to the staff down at the studio. I know you guys do a wonderful job, and it's sad that we have to be constantly talking about this subject. I just had a long distance phone call. My sister, who was with the corrections office department for 11 years, said that they just killed another police officer in Florida. So this seems like this is going to be a chain effect. And what's happening, I have a grandson who's 15 years old, and I'm frightened every time he leaves my house or he comes to visit me because the police have harassed him on several occasions. But that doesn't give anyone the right, I repeat, anyone the right to take a human life. And we in the African-American community, we have to learn how to respect the police. And the police have to learn how to respect us as being, quote, underlined minorities here in America. And until that's going to be done, this situation is going to continue. I was a part of the human rights struggle back in the 60s with the demonstrations and this, that, and the other. And I realized that when you're on that picket line, a lot of things, a lot of words are being said, a lot of language is being used, but we cannot take that back. And these two officers that lost their lives, and this guy that did all of this stuff, I think one of the sisters said that the guy had put it on the internet that he was going to do this, that, and the other. And we have to learn. We have to take things serious. If someone says I'm going to harm you, you're not obligated to turn the other cheek. Okay, and we're celebrating a gentleman. Many of us are celebrating a gentleman that represented he was the Prince of Light, the Prince of Love, and he was betrayed by his best friend for 30 pieces of silver. Think about that. 30 pieces of silver can't even pay your house rent for 1 week here in Harlem. So we have to learn, respect each other, be careful of what we say, and once you take a human life, brother and sister, that life cannot come back.
Thank you so much for that comment. And, definitely appreciate that. Strong words. And I think it is about respect. And I wanted to throw it back to George if we still have him on the line, because as somebody who is of color and who still represents the NYPD, what do you say about, I know Stanley threw this word at me earlier, respectability politics, and just healing the tension and the destruction that has been perpetuated between communities of color and police? Now, you seem like someone who might even stand in the gap. Do you have any, solution or sentiment on how we can move forward in making these changes?
I mean, the man with the answers was former Chief Philip Banks. He was the highest-ranking member of the department, uniform member, chief of the department. And when he left, when he was being bumped up to first deputy commissioner, I used to work with him, when I was the president of the precinct council here in northern Manhattan. And I can tell you, this man has so much knowledge and how to repair relations. I can tell you, the city is so large that, if you look at Harlem, Washington Heights, and Inwood and compare it to, the small town, the small neighborhoods in Queens or in Brooklyn, they're very different. We're talking about different populations, different demographics, the socioeconomic statuses are different. And I think that if this radio show can get Chief Banks or someone within the department, high-ranking African American member that can speak on these issues, I think that we will begin to repair relationships with certain communities, because the hostility will continue to go on and move forward. But I think that we have a resource that we don't use, and these are the precinct community councils. Every precinct in the city of New York has something called precinct community councils, and they're led by members of the community. But the problem is it's such a negative political group that Community Affairs Bureau, which oversees these precinct councils, sort of lead the charge. So they're very political within nature. But what we have to do as members of our respective community is get involved, whether through our community board or through our precinct councils, and have a voice. And the problem is when you have these meetings, they are arbitrarily, set up wrong or wrong time, and they're not really open to the public, and they're not really with, the New York State Sunshine Laws. We have to look at ways where we can get members of our community to come out to these meetings. And I can tell you, I can give you credit to Inspector Harrison, who's now Deputy Chief Harrison now. He used to be the commanding officer of the 3-2 in East Harlem. And I can tell you that the members of that community, largely black, will all attend his meetings. He was very, his feet was on the ground. And one person came to me and said, "Oh, we can never have a white commander in this neighborhood." And I looked at her and I said, "Why? Why can't we have a person of a different color lead a black community?" She says, "Because he or she won't understand our community." And I said to myself, "Well, this is a vicious cycle. The NYPD commanders are appointed by the commissioner, and the commissioner should be more in tune, with the communities that it represents, and it should be actually competent." And I agree with that. So in moving forward, I think that in creating this dialogue, we need our leaders, our elected officials, the leaders of this city, to really have serious dialogues with the members of the police department. Because at the end of the day, they do have to go home to their families and to their loved ones, et cetera. And I think that in having this conversation, we need to bring all the parties to the table and begin real dialogue and real reform.
Yes. Yeah, but thank you so much for those comments, George, and for calling in today and letting your voice be heard. Again, guys, if you want to call in, the number is 212-650-6903. I definitely agree 100% that it's a matter of coming to the table with open minds and open hearts and understanding one another. A lot of times what happens is you have police officers from, Suffolk County, Nassau County, who don't have a lot of interaction with Black Americans, and the only time that they see them happens to be on TV through stereotypical images that the media continues to perpetuate.
Hold the phone, Selena, because I have plenty of people of color who grew up in the city. I won't throw names out there, but people who grew up in the same places as we did. Well, not you're using the suburbs, and who had the same struggles that we had, and they over there talking about, "I don't want to protect you animals either." And they completely lost the plot.
So they're just racist.
They're just idiots.
They're just, okay.
We do have a call on the line, though, so I just want to get him on as well. So let your voice be heard, caller.
Yes. Hello?
Yes, you're on the line.
Yeah, I want to ask your guest, why is it that if two people, two people are in a car, and one person says, "I'm going to go in this store and get a pack of cigarettes," and he goes in there and kills 3 people, that the law will charge both people in that vehicle with this crime of first-degree murder, felony. when these so-called good policemen, black, white, whatever, when they see other police officers breaking the law, nothing is done about that. There's no arrest, and this is where the problem comes from. This is what the whole community sees. They see black folk being gunned down by police. They see police dealing drugs in our community, beating up suspects, handcuffed, and then these so-called good cops don't arrest these officers for doing this. Now, police officers, when they come out the precinct, out the academy, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution of New York State and protect the citizens we're in. They don't do this. And this is why communities are angry about that. And I'd like your guest to speak to that.
Well, just correction there. We don't have a guest. That was somebody who happened to be listening and called in, and we had him answer some of our questions while we had him on the line. But great question about just accountability in policing. And I think that's something that has been expressed throughout the protest movement that's been going on since the summer, and especially through the hashtag Black Lives Matter. It's just, where does it come? When are police held accountable when they kill, when they shoot, when they do something wrong? As you mentioned, there are good cops and there are bad cops, and the only thing that we want is to just see the bad ones be indicted, do time, or go through the criminal justice system and not come out on top as winners, despite what they may have done or what they're doing, because it sends that message that it's okay to act how you want to act and act above the law when you are a police officer, because nothing happens afterward. I understand we do have another caller on the line. We're going to take maybe the last
we
few
have
callers.
Barry and then Will.
Okay.
And then once they get
Will.
off the line, we'll open it up for one or two more callers depending on how much time we have. So, Barry, let your voice be heard.
I just want to say that if we are going to solve the issue, one of the issues we need to work with is making sure that the commander of the precinct is not having his officers to go out and specify a target to get a certain black person. Well, if he fits the bill or he looks close to that description, you pick him up. That's not getting justice. That's where we have to start first, I believe, at the precinct commander, to get him set. Then the officers will follow his lead. Then we will have a better discussion to come to the round table to talk.
Thank you so much for that, Barry. Will, let your voice be heard.
Hey, how you doing? You know something? I think the missing piece of this equation is the current black cops that's on the force. If they stand up as a group. Hello? Hello?
Go ahead, Will. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think the missing piece is if the current black cops are in the force, and anyone else who wants to stand up with them, stand up and say, hey, we're not having this no more. It's not going to be done like this. You know, we don't mind if somebody is doing a legitimate crime and you take them out. But all of this other killing and disrespect, we're not doing that. Listen, if y'all young people go back and listen to a Richard Pryor album from like 71 where he does a monologue about cops killing people accidentally, and he say, I'm reaching in my pocket, I don't want to be no accident. That just goes to show you how long this has been going on and calling it an accident. You know, and let me just say this here, as far as marching and all that other stuff, it has its place. But remember, back in the days, there was a Malcolm and there was the Panther Liberation Army who said they weren't going to be pushed around, you know? And all of that was contrast to what King was doing. And I believe that kept a lot of nonsense from coming into our neighborhoods, disrespecting us back then as well. You know?
Yes. Thank you so much for those remarks. And again, guys, we appreciate the calls, the tweets, everyone letting their voice be heard on this very crucial issue. I think the overall message here needs to be about progression and healing, like the gentleman just said. Marches have their place. Another caller also said that it comes to dialogue and coming to the table and having these much needed conversations with the people policing our community, and I think that the overall solution is community policing. Yes. We have one more caller.
All right. One more caller, and that caller is on the line right now. Yes. So we had Bree on the line. Bree, let your voice be heard.
Yeah, I was just calling to just say that I really agree with what you just said, the young lady. I don't know your name. I'm so sorry. I just started listening like today.
Her name is Selena.
Selena,
thank you for listening.
How are you? Okay. So I was saying I just completely agree. I think that there should be justice served. I'm just tired of seeing these cops get away scot-free as if they're not, a citizen just like the rest of us. Just because you're a cop doesn't give you the right to murder people and get away with it. And I think that's what pretty much sparked all of this. There needs to be justice served. And when justice is not served, you're going to have uprising. You're going to have illogical things done because justice was not served.
Right.
So I just feel like everybody should be accountable for their actions. I don't care who you are. Just make sure because you're a cop doesn't mean that you're not accountable. You're accountable for all your actions. And if it's ruled as a homicide, you're a murderer, period.
Thank you so much for calling and tuning in today, Bree. We definitely appreciate your comments and you letting your voice be heard. We do have to bring this conversation to a close, but we will continue to talk about this in the new year as we have been all year. Let Your Voice Be Heard has been on it, especially when it comes to these police shootings and murders of unarmed Black Americans. And now we see people retaliating with this type of violence. Of course, once we find out more information about the perpetrator, I'm pretty sure you will see that something wasn't there for him. He was probably off mentally, a little off emotionally. He also shot his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, on the same day that he killed these two NYPD officers. So, I mean, who's to blame there? Are you going to say, oh, that's Bill de Blasio's fault? That's the protesters' fault? That's Al Sharpton's fault? No. All the times when we see white mass murderers, we all take it back to mental illness, because that's an epidemic in our society that just so happens to be even more stigmatized in the Black community. So I'm not even that surprised that he wasn't even being helped. And for us to just overlook or gloss over the fact that he probably was not fully there when it comes to his mental health only hurts the situation. There are a number of people across this nation in every single community who does not fully understand or are equipped to handle firearms and to go about and to live a daily life. And we need to help and to serve those people to prevent future killings of this nature. And when it comes to the cops, like the last caller just said, Bree, we need accountability and we need justice, and we need the criminal justice system to work for us. And by us, I mean the citizens, I mean voters, and I mean Americans. Oh, and Stanley is giving me a cue.
I'm giving my closing statement.
Yes,
I didn't want to say it out loud because it sounds narcissistic, but you should record this.
Oh, that's what you were telling me to do.
Selena makes me take pictures when I don't want to take pictures, and then when I ask for things to happen, she's like, why do you want to do this? No, I'm just kidding. Selena's amazing. So I want to read to you guys something that I retweeted on my personal Twitter account, and then I shared on my Instagram page, and it comes from the official Twitter handle of Black Lives Matter, which, in case you guys did not know, was created by 3 women of color, trans women of color at that. And I want to mention that because we had to make sure that when we're fighting for justice, we're fighting for justice for people of color, for women, for LGBT communities, for cis communities, for transgender communities, for all communities, because if one does not have justice, no one has justice. But anyways, getting back on topic. On their Twitter handle, they put, an eye for an eye is not justice. Our movement is rooted in love, not revenge. And I had some very good friends who follow me on Instagram, and they have no problem calling me out when they agree or disagree on what I said. And I'll read you 2 of the comments that I got from people who I respect dearly. One of them said, love is going to bring justice? ? Another person says, I'm not saying that random shootings of police will bring change, but do you honestly think marches will really make a change? And I'm going to answer that question for you right now. A, yes, love will bring justice. B, yes, marches bring change, but not just marching down the street, confused, not knowing what you want to do because you think it's a cool thing to do. No. The Ferguson protesters, and I know this because I've spoken to a few of them, marched for 40 days in a row, just going in circles, not knowing what they wanted to do, where they were going, but going in circles because A, they were mad, and B, they were not going to stay quiet about it. It is just recently that they have gotten enough power and enough influence that they can just shut down anything to let their transgressions and frustrations be heard. They can shut down an Exodus movie, they can shut down a precinct, they can shut down a highway, they can shut down a police rally in favor of the police because they have that. Marching changes, but not just marching to walk down the street, but advocating for things that make a difference. The 2 officers who lost their lives yesterday, they were killed in cold blood, and no one should be celebrating those deaths because any death is a bad death, especially when you have 2 people who are fighting to serve and protect, which is what the NYPD is supposed to do. However, for those of you who believe that the Black Lives Matter movement or that Bill de Blasio or any person who is fighting for social justice is to blame for these deaths, you are horribly mistaken. We have a serious mental health issue in this country, and this man right here just highlighted that we have a serious mental health issue and a gun issue in this country. And for those of you who tried to blame the killer on his Muslim religion, we have a serious xenophobic issue in this country that we had to address. There's nothing wrong with being a Muslim. There is nothing wrong with being a person of color. There is nothing wrong with being a cop. There is something horribly wrong with being a bad person. And until we start having conversations that are open and loving and honest, we will always have these tense-filled rooms where people are mad at an entire group and they're not even sure why. And I'm sorry for those cops' lives. I'm sorry for any cop who loses their life while doing their job. But I refuse to stop saying Black Lives Matter because a crazy person, forgive me for the inflammatory word, went out and just did something that a crazy person would do. That's not what this is about. This is about people who care about making changes and holding poor cops accountable. Because no matter what happened yesterday, what happens tomorrow, or what happens next week, poor cops need to go. Racists need to go. Sexists need to go. And I'll be outside in the street screaming, shut it down, until I've lost my voice. And once I do, someone will step up and replace me because the ignorance has to go. But until then, we have to go.
Oh,
this is Let Your Voice Be Heard. We'll be back next week, or maybe we won't. I don't know what's going on next week.
We'll definitely be back in 2015. Thank you and shout out to everyone that's been supporting us in 2014. And look out for Let Your Voice Be Heard on our website. Until then, at letyourvoicebeheardradio.com or lyvbh.com. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Playback.